Welcome to Firearms Friday from the Wyoming State Museum in Cheyenne. I'm Evan Green. I'm the volunteer firearms historian here at the museum, and for the last 3 or 4 years I've been going through the permanent collection and recataloging and doing research on the firearms that are property of the museum here. So today I'm going to talk about the Pepperbox, the Allen Pepperbox. And we have a really nice one here that is in fact an Allen. These were kind of competitors for the early percussion revolvers that had a cylinder and a single barrel. These, if I can do this without pointing it too directly at our videographer, had rotating barrels so that when the trigger was pulled, the barrels would rotate. And this is a really fairly nice example of an Allen Pepperbox. And when I was checking up on these, researching these, I found a reference to the Allen Pepperbox from Mark Twain. And in 1861, Mark Twain traveled with his brother Orion to the Nevada Territory. Orion had been appointed as the Secretary of Nevada Territory, and Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, decided to go with him. So in this excerpt from his book Roughing It, which is great, if you have not read that book, you owe it to yourself. It is funny, it is well written, it's a great book. Anyway, here Twain describes the firearms that they carried for protection, which included an Allen Pepperbox. I was armed to the teeth with a pitiful little Smith & Wesson 7-shooter, which carried a ball like a homeopathic pill, and it took a whole 7 to make a dose for an adult, but I thought it was grand. It appeared to me to be a dangerous weapon. It had only one fault: you could not hit anything with it. One of our conductors, obviously a stage driver guy, practiced a while on a cow with it, and as long as she stood still and behaved herself, she was safe. But as soon as she went to moving about, he got to shooting at other things, she came to grief. The secretary had a small-sized Colt revolver strapped around him for protection against the Indians, and to guard against accidents, he carried it uncapped. So it would have been basically useless because you would have had to put the percussion caps on before you could discharge the gun, the Colt revolver. Mr. George Bemis was dismally formidable. He was our fellow traveler. We had never seen him before. He wore in his belt an old original Allen revolver, such as irreverent people called a Pepperbox, probably one very similar to this. As the trigger came, it says simply drawing the trigger back, cocked and fired the pistol. So it is what we would call today a double action only firearm. So as the trigger came back, the hammer would begin to rise and the barrel would turn over, and presently down would drop the hammer and away would speed the ball. To aim along the turning barrel and hit anything aimed at was a feat which was probably never done with an Allen in the world. But George's was a reliable weapon, nonetheless, because, as one of the stage drivers afterwards said, if she didn't get what she went after, she would fetch something else. And so she did. She went after the deuce of spades nailed against a tree once, and fetched a mule standing about 30 yards to the left of it. Bemis did not want the mule, but the owner came out with a double-barreled shotgun and persuaded him to buy it anyhow. It was a cheerful weapon, the Allen. Sometimes all of its 6 barrels would go off at once, and then there was no safe place in all the region round about but behind it. So that's the Allen Pepperbox. And as Twain described, in order to fire this, you pulled the trigger, which raised this hammer and rotated the barrels. You'll notice there's nothing even resembling a sight, either a rear sight or a front sight on this. So again, to hit anything with it would have been difficult, although you assume it was fairly effective as a short-range weapon. This one has some damage to it, and the rear of one of the barrels has blown out. So no idea how that might have happened, other than that if it was double charged or if there was an obstruction in the barrel. The fact that the damage is so close to the rear end of the barrel makes me think that possibly whoever was loading it lost count of how many barrels and put another charge in front of it, which would have blown out the barrel at this location. So the workmanship on these is pretty nice. I mean, it's got some engraving on it, nice walnut grips that are well fitted to the firearm. So again, they were a competitor to the Colts, the Remingtons, the Smith & Wessons that were revolving cylinder revolvers at the time. They were much cheaper. You could buy one of these for maybe a third or a quarter of what a new Colt or Smith & Wesson would have cost you at the time. And these continued in use for quite some time. And again, if you were close enough that you could hit somebody with it, they would probably regret having given you trouble. So, the Allen Pepperbox, there it is. Thank you for watching. If you've got questions or comments, put them in the section below. If you want to be notified when our videos post, hit that subscribe button. So, again, post your comments or give us a call at the museum. We're always glad to talk to you about firearms or Wyoming history.